And so we are being called to a deeper honesty, a deeper clarity of being. We're being called to the naturalness, the natural reality of what we are, the one heart, the one love that we could call God or divinity or innocence. The reason that there is a longing for this in every heart is that there is already a remembrance of this in every heart. It is the spark, the knowing of the purity and innocence. It is the remembrance of a love that is without condition, that is perfect and whole. And so the longing that we have is such a precious way of remembering and being with the call to remember, that every moment is a call to remember what is true, that there is nothing of truth in this world, that the world has no truth, no reality. There's no part of your human experience that you can hang on to with the mind that says, yeah, but this part, because there's no part that is reality. There's truly nothing to hang on to. And as we are humbled and called to a greater honesty, we are called to recognize that anything and everything that we want to try to hold on to is simply a protection or a way of delaying or holding back, keeping a sense of safety or protection. But what we are delaying is the call of the heart, the call, the longing for this love, this truth, this innocence that we are. So what would delay? What would hold back? It makes sense to the mind to keep a sense of safety, to move within a limited context of what has been learned. But what has been learned is a belief in separation. What has been learned is a misunderstanding. What has been learned is a false belief in division, in separation, in a me that is divided from the whole and separate from love, separate from the purity, the source. And yet all the while we are absolutely longing for the remembrance of wholeness and this love without condition, to remember the innocence, the naturalness of what we are, because the remembrance is already here present as presence, right? So what to do? Nothing at all. Nothing at all can be done. What it really boils down to is that every moment is the moment to keep the gaze fixed upon truth. Every moment is the moment, really, in very simple terms, to choose between the illusion or reality, to choose between fear or love, to choose between the mind or God, to choose between the misunderstanding or truth. that the mind can come up with so many ideas and techniques and wanting so much information about what this is all about. And if we make it very simple, the mind will just search for more complexity. The mind will just keep looking for more ways to add complexity, more layers, more teachings, more books, more videos, more teachers, right? More information. But what is the true direction is to stop accumulating, gathering, and complicating something that is very simple. And actually just recognize in total honesty how that mechanism is a protection. The whole mechanism of seeking, the whole mechanism to complicate is a protection. Because the simplicity of just being here and every moment of the sense of the life being lived is to turn the gaze to truth, to say yes to what is longed for. We want complicated instructions. We want years of sadhana. We want all of this kind of stuff that the mind imagines that more is better. But the more is a protection. The more is safety. It's understandable within the mind's mechanism why that would feel like safety. But we have to recognize that even that safety is a false safety. It's a safety that is in allegiance with the great misunderstanding. It's not true safety. True safety is the unmoving, unchanging, eternal, infinite presence that has never, ever deviated, been dimmed or disturbed in any way. The true safety is the wholeness that has always been whole and has never been diminished. So we have to turn to the wholeness in order to know and remember and rest in the wholeness of what we are. In the presence of being, the being that is whole, the whole awake field, the one reality, the one remembrance, the undivided, unfathomable, unexplainable truth is the direct experience of who you are. It is not in books. It is not in conversation. It's in the direct experience. It's in the direct recognition. So we are being called to a greater honesty, where every moment is this holy opportunity to illuminate what is possible in this moment. What is it possible to see through in this moment? What is it possible to see through? How is it possible to be more honest in this moment? A willingness to be uprooted, a willingness to be revealed, a willingness to be honest, transparent, and clear. Because it is only in the clarity that there can be the clear seeing, clear vision of the true essential nature, the goodness, the innocence, the purity of who you are. And in the felt sense of being, the simple sense of being, there is this possibility to remain and resolve the great misunderstanding. Everything that is happening in the play of life is part of the incredible flow of grace. This whole unfolding is a flow of grace. And to join the flow of grace, we have to let go of doership, let go of my will. Letting go of my will means perceiving everything that happens as thy will, as grace itself, presenting itself with an opportunity for greater honesty, radical honesty, an opportunity to see yourself clearly, to be deconstructed, destabilized out of the protective mechanism and the safety of complexity, and to know yourself in an open, revealed, undone wholeness. That we're constantly from the mind looking for more, to spice things up, right? To make it more interesting, to gather more activities, more stories, more experiences. Experiences will happen in the flow of life living itself, but it's this ability to really notice what is the distraction, what is a protection, what is a hiding place. Life itself is offering us everything that is required. Life itself is the flow of grace. Life itself is a flow of vitality. And everything that flows in is this graced opportunity to meet whatever happens in the nervous system. To be so present as presence itself, so awake and aware as awareness itself, that there can be a noticing when there is any kind of resistance, protection, a trigger, a defense that arises, because these are all signs that something is being stirred. And what is being stirred is the nervous system. It's the consciousness that is being stirred, the discordant patterns of consciousness that are holding a sense of limitation are being rocked. They're being rocked to pull them out. These patterns of limitation that play as protection and conditionings are being rocked, are being stirred in order to awaken the sleeping dreamer. Awaken these holding patterns of protection and false safety, and actually offer us the possibility of realizing what we are longing to realize, that we are being given everything that it takes in order to realize this gorgeous truth. But it requires not to resist what we are being given, not to push it away, not to deny it, not to turn away from it. It will come again, of that we can be sure. But why would we put off? Why would we delay and hold back when everything that we are longing for is being offered? It just doesn't look like the me or the mind thinks that it's going to look like. The flow in consciousness is a momentum, like an evolutionary momentum within consciousness to awaken out of the dream, to awaken to the innocence and purity of the divine wholeness. Consciousness itself is in a momentum, a trajectory to see through it's delusion, right? And this is a momentum that is happening in the one consciousness. No one is left out of this, but we do not need to be concerned with anyone other than our own direct experience. To be concerned with anyone else's experience is just another distraction, even if it is your partner or your family. To be concerned with anyone else's opening is just a distraction away from your own honesty. It does not matter what is happening for anyone else. You have absolutely no way of understanding or creating any kind of explanation around that. Whatever you think is happening is the mind's interpretation according to a me that wants to see things in a limited way. The only way that we can meet in truth is in the being, in clarity, in clear vision. We can't meet in limitation and expect that it's truth. So why be distracted with anyone else? Why not just be with yourself? Be with the reality and the knowing of who you are in the presence of being, and allow the flow of life to take care of the residues and surface everything that has been pushed down, repressed, and suppressed, so that these discordant patterns of consciousness can free themselves, right? There is a wisdom and intelligence that is moving everything, and consciousness itself knows how. It does not need any interpretation or understanding from the mind. And that is why this whole unfolding is such a holy surrender. And the holy surrender is to thy will. The holy surrender is to just in the moment say yes to God, to say yes to love, without understanding or needing to embellish, not needing to complicate the moment. Just say yes to God, where you find the being, the knowing of the being, where you find the glory in this moment. We could even say simply just where awareness is in this moment. Just rest as that and allow everything to unfold. And, you know, this is not to transcend away from the grace that is being offered to meet the strategies and protections and transmute. It's the way that true transmutation happens, right? True transmutation happens not through transcending away from it, but being the transcendent field that is the wide open spaciousness, the light that can illuminate the delusion and illusory happenings and the patterns and the stresses, and allow these discordant, limited patterns of consciousness to open into the light, to refine into the light of their true essential nature. Because really everything that is discordant in consciousness has to surface and be transmuted through the nervous system into pure consciousness. And let's say then the pure consciousness has this possibility in its clarity to really remember its perfection, right? Remember its essence. So we could say that we come out of the sense of person to, which is like a limited consciousness, a mind consciousness, a body consciousness. We open to the pure consciousness where there's a knowing that what we are is the knowing. We are the knowing. You are life. You are the resonance of life, right? And in the knowing of being the resonance of life, life flows and has this possibility of really flowing as grace to surface and refine everything into the being. So we open from the limitation of mind, body consciousness, and the belief in separation to a pure consciousness, a wide open field of consciousness that's flowing as life. And through this mechanism, this natural mechanism, we rebalance and harmonize in the whole field of consciousness, right? It's affecting the whole. And as that whole is affected, let's say this is where the whole, as the whole is affected, the wholeness starts to create reverberations for this possibility to remember the divinity, right? So it's all happening as one consciousness that is opening to itself. And as we open out of limitation and the personal and the me, we open to the impersonal flow. And as the impersonal flow of life, this is where the major refinement happens, where consciousness is waking itself up out of its residual patternings of limitation, stress, and discordance, and start to really remember a sense of oneness, that this consciousness can reference itself in and as everything, as it remembers itself. But at any moment, there's this possibility for consciousness itself to remember its perfection, which is a finer frequency, a pure frequency. The clear bell of God's glory can ring in this consciousness in any moment, right? It's not a process in time. There's no linear way of measuring or understanding the maturing and how the process of transmutation and surfacing all of the discordance, at what point can the glory be known? Because the glory is known, right? The glory is already known, and it's accessing that which already knows by resting here and keeping the gaze fixed, knowing yourself here and allowing whatever transmutation has to happen. And the transmutation happens truly and naturally when there is a resting here, because there is the spaciousness and the purity and the guidance here that all of these discordant patterns can flow towards in order to surrender themselves, give themselves up, accept the truth, right? In a way, it's that all of these places that are masquerading in falseness, in safety, in misunderstanding, just give themselves up to God. They step forward out of the darkness, the ignorance, and the arrogance, and they just give up. They just step into the light. Any moment, every moment is a possibility to step into the light. It's always fresh, it's always new, it's always now. It's not happening in time. It's not an experience of someone that had this awakening and had this and knows this. None of that is relevant. Let it all go. What is relevant is how ready you are in this moment to say yes to God. How alert are you? How awake are you? How aware are you? How bright are you? How radiant are you in your clarity? That this moment is the moment to say yes, yes to anything that might be here, that could be masquerading as some kind of sense of knowing, but is just an opportunity to see more clearly, right? Ever fresh, ever new, no position, no strategy, nothing to hang on to. That we meet in the one, in the love, when there's nothing being held onto, where you can feel that sense of buoyancy and illuminated radiance of the one heart, where this knowing already knows. And where this knowing already knows, there is a resonance that is so bright and so alive. And it's to be with this aliveness of the knowing that already knows. There's no doing, there's no process, there's nothing that the mind can pin itself into and understand and create as a true doing, because there's nothing to do but be. What we are opening to is that there is nothing of the world that is of any use. So let go of the crutches and the projections of the world and just be here and be so fully present as presence itself that the tendrils are all pulled in to such a depthful clarity that the light can illuminate whatever is ready to give itself up, whichever lemming is ready to throw itself off of the cliff, right? Whatever is ready to free fall into the glory of the remembering of the one. That the simplicity is choose love, choose the being, choose the glory right now. If you feel that you have a choice, use that choice to choose where the knowing knows itself. And it is no more complicated than that. In this choice, everything is aligned because the intelligence can flow freely and everything is taken care of, because there never has been a me that is doing anything. There is a naturalness here. You are the naturalness. You are the gorgeousness of this moment. You are the goodness, the purity of this moment. There's nothing that you can do better. You don't need any more of anything. The need, the desire is the mechanism of the mind to hinder and delay the knowing of yourself. If this is all that is longed for, why the delay? Why the holding back? Of course, it's because there are protections and residues in the way. We could call that karmic obscurations. But in truth, it doesn't matter. We don't want to create strategies and concepts out of any of this, because doesn't the mind love to say, oh, but I've got to work through my karma first. I've got to do this first. I have to prepare myself in this way. All nonsense. All from a mind that doesn't know the truth. There's nothing that needs to happen in order for you to know yourself, but to use the choice in this moment to say yes to God, to say yes to love, and to feel the aliveness of being the light that can illuminate everything that is a strategy for safety, to come to a place where there is nothing more alive than the possibility of illuminating another hiding place. Now, this trajectory, this momentum that is happening naturally in consciousness is inviting us to a greater honesty. It's like there is a kind of increase in the velocity. I have no idea what that even means, but those are the words that want to come. There's an increase in the velocity and the speed, but it's not a speed as that we know. It's a speed which is, it's like a shaking. It's like a shaking. And that shaking is the shaking of the great invitation. It's like a spinning, and that spinning is the spinning of the mechanism of surrender that keeps wholeness whole. It's an increase, flow in the consciousness of that mechanism, because the consciousness is refining in a way that there's a readiness for there to be a natural, now more movement. This increased velocity is that the momentum of purity, of the pure divinity, can move things more. And as there's more of a movement, we have more of a possibility to say yes. And that might look like things feeling like they are more stirred in the life, like we are being called to a greater honesty, to receive the grace of the invitation, more holy, that our yes is louder, clearer, more resonant than ever. That the call is this recognition that we are one movement, one flow of life, one flow of consciousness in a momentum, and that the invitation is to recognize this momentum and to recognize the incredible grace of it, and to not turn away from it by resting in delusion and keeping the illusion alive and keeping the allegiance with the illusion of separation. And really, the simplicity is to accept the invitation to truth, to accept the truth over the misunderstanding, to stop dwelling in the misunderstanding, telling the stories of the dream and the misunderstanding, but to stand in the light as the light and say yes to the glory, say yes to being the principle of illumination that can illuminate and shine as the radiance of the knowing of the one heart, the one glory. That we have this most profound possibility. Why would we turn away from holiness? Why would we turn away from wholeness when it is all that is longed for? That the momentum of life is the grace that is calling us, inviting us to meet everything that is a disturbance, a stress being released, a resistance, a division, a control, holding a position, a way of not wanting to be inclusive, completely inclusive, a way of wanting to keep division in place so that the me is comfortable and safe, to let all of those protective boundaries just go. By illuminating and coming to a greater honesty and trusting the glory knows how, that we don't have to know how. We don't have to implement and take control. We don't have to hold my plan, my way, because all of that is allegiance with the delusion. We have to open to the great flow of life and the spontaneity, so that we are invited into this flow of this increased velocity, that we become more in that. We become more real. We become more honest, more true in that. We realize the oneness of what we are, where we're not pushing this one over here, that one over there. We're not keeping ourselves in some kind of idea of specialness in any way at all, that we are so open to have all of the ways that we could hide be illuminated, and that we're willing to feel that spinning, that rocking of the patterns of limitation as the field shakes and moves and spins, as these patterns are undone, they're unraveled. You can feel this in the nervous system. It's maybe what gets spoken when a revelation starts to come in and a humbling starts to come in. The ground starts to shake. The nervous system starts to feel a kind of quaking and spinning. And the me might want to protect. We get to a point where it's exciting, like, hallelujah, something new is being revealed. And that holding pattern is allowed to shake itself free, to free itself. And we can feel more of the truth of what we are in that freedom, that we're so willing for anything and everything to be shaken loose, to be freed. And we will see that life will offer us every opportunity to not just push our ideas and concepts upon the flow of life, but we join the flow of life. We join the flow of love. What we are longing for is love. So why not be the love that we are? Why not choose the love that we are and flow as the love that we are? You know, the mind can conceptualize this idea of all inclusivity and say, oh, well, it's all love. Everything is God. But that's actually just another hiding place that the me is using for its patterns and strategies to be allowed, right? I can hide in a strategy of saying, it's all God, it's all love, it's all one. But if that is not what's truly lived, it's just a strategy. The truth is that it's not all one in that way. The truth is there is only one, right? It's very different, very different. It's not a divisive mechanism that we can use as a strategy to keep separation and division in place. It's that there is only one. And where there's any sense of division, can we have the radical honesty to reveal that we're trying to hold a strategy of protection in place and illuminate that, let it go, and actually feel the natural oneness of love, the one love, the perfect love, the unconditional love that isn't dividing according to the me and the concepts and the ideas and beliefs. There's something so powerful if you can actually feel the difference between this conceptualizing that's just another protective strategy and the reality of the one. The one will move as life, but the one never divides. Everything is conspiring for us to know the glory. Everything is conspiring for us to know God. We cannot know God if we are holding concepts about God. We cannot know love in its perfection if we are holding concepts about love. If we're holding protections, we're keeping ourselves falsely safe and divided from everything that we are longing for. So this radical honesty, this invitation for a greater honesty, is what is alive here. How do we hold positions? How do we use our roles? How do we use anything about our human experience as a way to keep ourselves safe? And is there a complete willingness to let it all go, all of it, into God, into love, without knowing what that looks like, without holding a control of what does life look like in that letting go? Cannot know, cannot know, cannot know anything but God. You cannot know anything. The only true knowing is the pure knowledge, which is the knowledge of the glory, knowledge of love, knowledge of what we could call then the self in the truest sense, right? That true realization is coming to the divine reality, and it requires a complete letting go of everything. And you know, the glory of how this is unfolding is that what that means we cannot know or hold any sense of, because it keeps shifting. It keeps shifting within our human experience. As the whole shifts, what is possible shifts. What can be seen, what can be illuminated shifts, right? It shifts for the whole. That's why it's so exciting. Where we cannot hold on to anything. There's nothing of our human life or experience that we can hold on to. There are no anchors in the worldly life. The only anchor is the glory. The only anchor is the presence of being. The only anchor is to choose love, right? We cannot anchor ourselves in our relationships, our families, our seeming financial security, in our belongings. We cannot anchor ourselves in anything of the world, because the world is an appearance. It's like anchoring in a movie, right? In a story. We cannot anchor in that. But the great glory is, it's so profound, because in order to realize and to allow this life to be the most profound life that it can possibly be, is that it becomes a life of absolute service, a life of absolute submission, where the life is given to the glory, the life is given to love, where there's nothing that's wanted for the me, where we're not trying to anchor in me and my wants and my preferences and what I own and what I have and what my intentions are. We don't anchor in any of that. We anchor in love, and we give the life to love. We give the life to God. This is the highest possibility of what we might say is the human life, is to let the human life be the divine life. By letting go of everything that we think we know and what we want, what we desire, what we need, that we give that. We give my will to thy will. Of course, there's not even really a thy will as an opposite or something different to my will. There's only thy will. There's only the glory. But we give up the sense within the fibers of our being. We give up the sense I am this body. We give up the sense I am this mind. We give up the sense of holding on to my story, my life, my family, my way. We give it all up to the anchoring in this moment. And it doesn't look like what the mind thinks it looks like. It doesn't mean turning your back on your family or any of the way. We can't even put words to try to explain that and even try to appease the mind, because that is all not reality. When we are resting in truth, the life is the divine life, and we meet everything as love. There's only love, and we cannot know that until we say yes to that. We can come to this recognition within our direct experience in the unfolding of where do we meet? Where are we the same? Where is there love here? And we meet everything, everyone in this love. This is the truest even possible explanation, but it's never going to be what the mind thinks. But we have then this opportunity to see how the mind is fear. The mind is fear. The mind imagines loss. The mind imagines upsetting people. The mind imagines all of these things, and none of that is true. It's just another distraction. It's just another tactic of the mind to imagine that it needs to keep itself safe in the great misunderstanding. It's just to meet in this moment in love, anchor in love, in presence, in truth, anchor in the longing, because the longing is a resonance of fulfillment. Longing and its fulfillment is not divided. Longing is the resonance of fulfillment already here. Longing is the resonance of your knowing. Your knowing is so precious because your knowing is God's knowing. Your knowing is the memory, the remembrance of this glory, this light, this radiance that is the one whole truth. And this is what we are being invited into. And so how does this transmutation and surfacing of the repressions and suppressions that we have been speaking of? How is all of this a part of this truth? How could it not be a part of this truth? How could it not, right? Everything is included, not from the perspective of the mind that says everything is included, but from the perspective of God, the perspective of love. There is only love. Wholeness only knows wholeness. Love only knows love. From this perspective, everything is included, and it's already known as love. It's already known in its wholeness, right? It's this little thing that these hands do. This is the glory, the wholeness that's never been divided, that already knows itself, right? Never divided, only knows love, only knows wholeness. And so when this seems to be appearing in the presence of this, this only knows itself. It doesn't move, it doesn't budge. It just loves, it just shines as the radiance. And what happens naturally as the transmutation is that this little bundle of limitation and patterning, in the presence of love, it recognizes the resonance of its essence as love. It recognizes and remembers within its functioning that it too is that love. It's like the remembrance, the smriti, the memory of its wholeness starts to resonate, and it finds the courage to surface and open, and it sees itself as a clear reflection and surrenders itself into the remembrance of its true nature. So on the surface of life, this looks like surfacing old material, old stresses, patterns of limitation. It looks like surfacing suppression. It looks like surfacing repression, deeply held, unconscious patterns and voices, seemingly of the child. And all of these ways of speaking about this are purely intelligent mechanisms that they act as a bridge and bring a sense of safety. It's really this. It's this light appearing in exactly the formation that is needed to coax these places forward so that they can surface and like step onto a seeming bridge through a profound mechanism that looks like acknowledging them, allowing them, meeting them in a presence of love that welcomes them so wholly. So, it's happening now in the laws of nature. So profoundly, right? The light welcomes everything so profoundly, so unconditionally, that anything and everything that has been hidden, kept secret, pushed down, can recognize the presence of God, can recognize the presence of the ultimate supreme safety, can recognize the presence of unconditional, undivided love, and can feel true safety, and can open, surface, and be transmuted in the presence of a divine love. A love that is so all-encompassing that these places offer themselves up. They charge forth into the light. They charge forth like lemmings off a cliff, right? They charge forth to be humbled out of the patterns of limitation. Charge into the love, charge into the light without knowing what is it going to look like there? How is it going to be? Am I going to be safe? Am I going to be able to get the tea that I like? Am I going to be able to take my best shoes with me? Am I going to be able to stay in contact with my best friends? What is my mother going to think of this? Right? Without any of this, these places just charge forth because the recognition is just everything that has been longed for in the life. The recognition just is of holiness. It's the holiness of the moment where the heart cannot, it cannot hold anything back in the presence of such love. It cannot hold its safety. It cannot hold its protection. It cannot hold its division. It cannot hold its roles. It cannot maintain anything because the magnetic pull, the magnetic pull, the magnetic pull is so huge that it's calling the iron filings of our repressed and suppressed childhood holding patterns, calling it forth, calling it into the light, the supreme embrace, the mother, the glory, right? It's like these places just run to be held in such a love, right? Waving the white flag, so open. Nothing can hold a defense in the presence of this glory, right? And nothing would want to, right? Because this is where longing and fulfillment are one, right? It's one resonance. That when we follow our longing and we rest in the rawness of our longing, only God, only God, only love, only love, only love, only love, only love, only love, we will find the glorious epiphany of fulfillment within the resonance of our longing, because the longing is not someone's longing for something else. It's the momentum of this flow of surrender that keeps wholeness whole, right? Wholeness doesn't have to be kept whole, but the reason that wholeness never ever divides, the reason that the glory is glorious is that it's in absolute, perpetual, devoted surrender to itself. And it keeps its integral wholeness whole through that devoted surrender. So when we enter the when we enter the momentum of this devotion, of this surrender, when we enter this flow of attraction, it is the flow of the longing that carries us to the fulfillment of God in the heart, right? This. Right? We have to just let it all just be as it is, right? There's nothing. At this point, are we gonna hold on? What are we gonna hold on to? What are we what are we gonna hold on to? What are we gonna hold on to, right? Why would we hold on to anything, right? So we just let go. We just let go. We just let go. We just let go. We just say yes. We just say yes. And the yes suddenly is yes, right? It's the yes gets bigger, it gets clearer, it gets wilder, because it's freer, it's unabandoned, it's free, right? So it's all one. There's one momentum, right? So whatever is happening here is happening everywhere, to whatever degree it can be felt, right? So there's no division. There's no one having a separate experience from another. In the deepest truth, it's one flow, it's one momentum, one trajectory. The sense of the experience is the unique felt sense at the point, but the point is a point of the infinite field, and the infinite field is the one flow. So whatever is happening in the wholeness, in the one. And it is shifting the patterning in the laws of nature. It's shifting the patterning, it's unraveling, and it's inviting, calling forth this call for a greater honesty, where there's nothing to hold on to, no story, no defense, nothing is known. There's silence. There's nothing but silence. And the silence is the peace of the being that has never been disturbed. And the aliveness is the knowing that knows itself. And the joy is the causeless, joyful delight of that which knows itself, just simply in the revelatory knowing of itself, ecstatic in the knowing of itself, free in the undivided openness of the one heart. where love just loves, right? So here we can really sense where we are the same is in love. Where all beings belong to the one being is in love. There is an openness here, a clarity here, a knowing here. And that knowing is the flow of life, flowing within itself, flowing to know itself. And that flow of life flows as a flow of consciousness, flowing to release the patterns of limitation and free and transmute all that is held. So it does not matter what is happening in this moment. It is just to allow, because where the allowing is where freedom is. It is to choose truth in this moment over the great misunderstanding. It is to choose love over fear. It is to choose yourself over the persona. It is to choose God and the glory over the illusion of separation. Mm. Mm. That what is moving here is one movement, and everyone is equally included in this. But the inclusion, let's say, the felt sense of the inclusion is going to be recognized in the depth of the yes to the being, right? Everything is included. Nothing could not be included. It does not matter what it feels like or what it looks like. But here is the light. Here is the light that is radiantly shining and transmuting everything that is discordant in the field. This. In the field of consciousness, and the sense of the nervous system is consciousness. The nervous system is being transmuted. It will call the stresses forward to be transmuted into the remembrance. Nothing is excluded. Either there is the knowing of this truth, this love, the recognition, or there is something that is in the process of transmuting and coming to this love. Whatever is here, it is not to hold it back. Allow the voices, allow the expression of everything. Don't push anything away, because this all-encompassing love is welcoming everything to be here just as it is. Just as it is. Has nothing to do with the me and the mine. Has nothing to do with the me and the mind. There is nothing to understand, nothing to do. It is just to be here. The great simplicity is that there's only ever one possibility. Any moment, whatever it looks like, whatever flavor it has, and however much the mind thinks that my story is unique and bigger and more dramatic and whatever than anyone else's, it's all the same. There's nothing that is different, right? It's all one illusion, and the stories, the flavors are completely irrelevant. The great simplicity is, in this moment, there is an outstretched hand which feels like your choice, and that choice is to choose truth, to choose reality, to choose love, to choose the presence of being over the delusion, over the illusion of separation, and over the fear. It's so simple. In any moment, there's nothing else that needs to happen but to shift the attention, shift the focus to the longing, to the glory, to say yes to truth, yes to God, yes to love. And that's all it takes. Everything else happens in the presence and the fine frequency of your yes, right? All of the transmutation, all of the surfacing, all of the processing that needs to happen happens in the presence of love. And yes, there are more subtle ways that we can speak about, you know, the inquiry that happens in order to really surface and allow everything to come forward. There are subtle ways that we can support that, but essentially the greatest and most simple way to speak of this is to recognize that there's nothing in the human experience that is the reality. And the way that we see through. Okay, so the way that we see through is that we surface the voice, we surface the stresses, we allow everything to come forward, and we allow an acknowledgement. We allow the bridge of the expression. We allow the complete welcoming to happen. Once the welcoming has happened, there's another stage that we mature into, which is the recognition in the light, in the glory, that nothing ever happened, right? That we open to the holding pattern that holds a story. But the truth is that when the transmutation completes itself, the recognition is that nothing ever happened. And when the transmutation completes itself, that's why there's a sense of there being nothing there. No story, no stress, no memory, no past, right? It's just not there. True transmutation completes the refinement of consciousness into the light, into the glory. So we could say nothing ever happened. We hear this, right? Nothing ever happened. But we can't, of course, conceptualize that. Nothing has ever happened to the me. Sorry, nothing has ever happened in reality. Nothing has ever happened to God, to the wholeness, to love. Nothing has ever happened. The story that something has happened to the me, in the me, is the story of separation. And we have to surface the holding patterns that are keeping that story of separation, the story of like a deficiency, of lack, not enoughness, unlovable, unworthy. Everything that's keeping that in place, we have to surface that into the presence of love in order that the full transmutation can happen, which is the recognition that nothing happened in reality. But we can only open to this truth in the light of reality and the recognition that nothing has happened to wholeness. And you are the wholeness to which nothing has ever happened. You are the love, the innocence that has never been diminished. You are the purity that has never been tainted. You are the glory that has never ever left its glorious abode, which is the divine reality, which is God or the mother, right? And this knowing is already here. The remembrance of this is already here. And the remembrance of this wholeness is what allows us to have the courage and the trajectory, which is the natural impersonal flow of attraction, to open out of the great illusion of being someone that is separate and divided into the recognition that there has never been any division, that it would be completely impossible for there to ever be any kind of division, that you have never been apart from love, from the glory, from the divine wholeness. It is not possible for wholeness to be anything but whole. And where we follow the knowing of this and open to the remembrance of the glory of what we are, we allow everything to surface through the process in whichever way it needs to come onto the bridge in the total welcoming where its voice can be heard. And we can really use this bridge of allowing the voice to be heard to surface the old material, release the stress and holding in the nervous system, so that we can really get a sense of the undivided impersonal and allow a depth of transmutation to happen that brings the remembrance of this glorious oneness that can recognize in direct experience nothing ever happened. Nothing has ever happened. Right? We are the unborn, deathless reality, the eternal life divine. This is the truth of what we are. And we're opening not into these kind of partial ideas of that our human experience is an awakened experience, but that this lived experience is the divine life, right? That we're awakening out of our humanness, we're awakening out of our humanity. And, you know, there can be things that want to speak about human and divine, full human being. And there's a certain, you know, it can be just language. But the truth is that in our divinity, there's only divinity. And whatever this lived experience is that divinity. That in a way, the humanity is a distortion in consciousness, right? And that we're opening, the trajectory is that consciousness is opening out of those limited patterns and distortions into the remembering of the undivided whole. And that we are just vehicles in service for this. And so the greatest possibility of this seeming human life is to be in service as a resonant yes to divinity, yes to wholeness, in a way that cannot be imagined with the mind. And yet we open to finer and finer frequencies of remembering. That we do not need the protection of our human story or our human strategies, that we do not need the safety of separation, that the fact that we have a longing for love is the guidance that shows us that we have a bigger purpose in our human life, and that our human life, the purpose of it is to recognize the longing for something greater, that we already have a remembrance of a love that is so pure and free and without condition, and that we are to follow that already knows, and it's longing to know the fullness of itself, out of our human mind-body limitation and into the unlimited freedom of being love, following the Pied Piper's tune to love, just following that magnetic pull of the finer frequencies that call us to our true essence nature, where we're not holding on to stories of what it means and what's included. We're not holding on to concepts or beliefs, that we're letting go into the trajectory of utter devoted surrender, that nothing else is more important than letting go and the holy yes to God. And that as we say yes to God, to the unknown, we open to our true essential nature, where we're no longer qualifying our experience according to limited human language, that we're no longer qualifying or trying to fit in to the box of humanity's context, because we're resonating and living as a love, as a divinity that is everything that has been longed for, and that the whole life is a living service that is uplifting the whole, right? We're not leaving anyone behind, because there's no one to leave behind. There's no one to leave behind. We leave that idea behind, right? We leave behind the idea that there's anyone to leave behind. There's one, and one alone, and there's nothing apart from that wholeness. So, resting here. Just be where you are. Be where you are. Say yes where you are. There's nothing to do, nothing to understand. It's all here. And you can feel the resonance of that. You can feel the knowing that knows. And it's to be the knowing that knows, resonating in the knowing, and feel that knowing, that flowing resonance is the flow of life. It's the flow of intelligence. It's the flow of grace, that you're in the trajectory of consciousness moving to know itself, free itself, shake itself free of limitation in order to resonate in the remembrance of wholeness. Mm-hmm. And the great glory is that it's already here. It's already done. It's already done. The celebration is what we are here for, right? It's already done. It's a done deal. We just have to remember it's already done. And then we're living as this truth, in the radiance of this glorious, unconditional, perfect love. How could the doer do anything when it's already done? It's to turn the attention, attune to the resonance of the knowing that knows, the being that is, the love that is, where the remembrance of this wholeness is already whole. Oh, great glory. Oh, great glory.